Hi, I'm Dan, 36, gay, married, and welcome back to my video dissertation on the show that has me in a chokehold and will not let me go, Heated Rivalry. Now, before we jump in, here is a sneak peek of some of my thoughts about episode 4. Jane says, feel like getting murdered in a dark, scary alley in Montreal in 2 weeks. A nice callback to episode 2. Like, now we're all just sticky. I would rather drink the champagne. But one of his teammates comes up and like kisses him on the cheek out of celebration. It was a callback for me to something that we see in episode 5, but we see them at the cottage having conversations, about hockey stuff. And it serves as this like much needed dichotomy in trying to almost like get to know him without having to do so in person with him, not even Jane. And the look Ilya gives her at 10:16. Mind you, this is his most trusted person in the world. He's clearly paid enough attention that he made sure he had ginger ale in anticipation of him coming over. And Ilya doubles down and says, they say you're boring too. Again, something that we believe Ilya really loves about Shane. We get a yeah, sure. And sure is a very important word in the next episode. He melts and he pulls Shane in and he's playing with his hair and is being the most affectionate and loving that he's been, which kind of breaks my heart. God, reliving these, it's like, I just need to remember that episode 6 exists. I took this as Jacob signaling to us watchers, don't get too invested in this Rose love story because you guys love each other. Stop trying to test him. Stop trying to inflame him. And still, that club scene made me cry actual tears. In the series, we'll be going episode by episode through season 1 and discussing the character development, moments that broke me, those that healed me, and all of the incredible tiny nuances that made me fall hard for this version of queer love. Quick disclaimer up top. I will be reviewing the show as its own kind of piece of art. I have not read the books or delved into any of the other world building, but I do have the books, guys. I'm going to read them. Already getting requests to do some additional videos once I do read them, and I will. But with that being said, there are going to be inner dialogues and other things that hardcore lovers of the books see and know that I do not. If that works for you, come along. If not, I'll catch you once I read the books. Also, thank you to all of the new subscribers that have found me over this crazy couple weeks. It's been really cool to have a lot of you messaging me and kind of going back and forth in the comments. This fandom's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, let's dive into episode 4, Rose. If you've watched any of my prior deep dives, you know that I like to structure kind of my content and my chapters based on kind of like key segments of the episode. And so for episode 4, my key segments are ReHEATED, Are You Single, Stay, Rose, and All the Things You Said. The first 46 seconds are us getting reacquainted with our two boys that we took a break from in episode 3. The highs and the lows. We start out the episode with them playing one another, and Ilya's having some fun. He's kicking Shane's butt, and we get this, again, these like small moments on the ice where they're, at the puck drop. Is that the right terminology? Probably not. And he is, giving him shit. Like, should I do the hat trick now or should I wait till the end? It's more dramatic at the end. But the smile and the kind of like twinkle in his eye is more flirtatious than just rivals. We then cut to the summer of 2014, which is signified always as them just running. I actually would love to know how many times Ilya shot running around this house over the course of filming. But we see that they're again kind of now texting back and forth, but this time it's different than kind of the like overt texting that we saw in episode 2. And we get Shane being, the polite king that he is, saying, "Have a good summer," ! And Ilya replying back, "Don't have too much fun." I think starting to signify here that the shift might be that Ilya now is a little bit more invested in what Shane does with his free time. I think it's a fairly interesting foreshadowing moment for what we're going to see through the rest of this episode. But they are clearly in a spot where some healing has happened since we saw them last, which makes me happy. We also continue to get this color story between the two of them, where Ilya is almost always in black and Shane is always in white. I mentioned this, I think, in episode 1, where we see them in the gym and it's bad versus evil, or trying to just signify through color that they are in different places in their lives, and or they should be positioned against one another. And just a call back here. Just realized I don't have my gold chain necklace on. What was I thinking? Continuity matters. Which then is only highlighted further by the next couple clips we see. We've got Ilya out partying with Svetlana. We have our good boy Shane in his glasses, reading in bed, and then at a campaign shoot for, it appears to be some sort of branded content with a drink. I don't know. And they're kind of like spraying him with water. And it kind of made me think, if you're looking at the two of them, right, from a brand perspective, who is the safer bet to invest in? Who are you not going to have to like take down all of the content because they got canceled that week for doing something? Obviously, Shane is the perfect choice. And I don't think at all throughout the season we hear anything about Ilya having that type of sponsorship. And it's funny because what they're trying to do with Shane in that commercial shoot is actually something that Ilya would be perfect for, right? The like sexy, smoldering, wet shirt, bad boy type of a thing. And even though I hated this scene, not this one, the scene that I'm about to talk about in episode 2, where Ilya had just won and Shane went up to his penthouse and that like sexual thing happened. I mentioned like when you walk in and he's just standing there with his shirt unbuttoned, like holding the glass of vodka. I mean, that could be like a Hugo Boss ad, right? Just him standing there, gorgeous, whatever. Same sort of thing with this, right? Like if given the opportunity, I think he would have done very well in a setting like that. The next clip, we see Ilya looking at the calendar for who they play next, and it's Montreal. We cut to Shane getting a text from Lily saying, "See you soon, winky face." And it's now time for them to play one another. And we get a couple clips of them ramming into each other on the ice, banging up against the wall. And we get some foreshadowing clips of what they are going to be doing with their bodies later that night. And we cut to our boy Shane getting the cup this year, which is beautiful and awesome. And Ilya sitting now a flip where last summer Shane had messaged Ilya saying, "Have a great summer!" ! And this time Lily is initiating the conversation and says, "Have a boring summer." Thanks, Ilya, for that one. We keep getting this boring through line. And I think genuinely at first it was like Ilya meant it. Compared to the life that Ilya lives, Shane does live a very boring life. But as we progress from here through the end of the season, it's fairly clear that the consistency and lack of volatility with Shane is something that Ilya actually loves and is like one of the things I'm sure that drew him to Shane because of the utter disaster that is the rest of his life. And so in going back and rewatching, you know, you could take this as Ilya like making fun of Shane. But I think it ultimately becomes like a compliment. And then we get a response, enjoy friendly Russia. All right, touche. Again, we see how they spend their time off. Shane is in bed reading with his glasses. Ilya is out partying, and Makinon looks like a supermodel, gorgeous woman, which I take to show that they are still in different places when it comes to life, but potentially also their engagement. But then we get this shot of them looking at their phones and seemingly opening the text to see if there is one. It doesn't appear that there is. Oh, here it is. And I think demonstrating that they wish there were open or more open lines of communication between the two of them, but neither of them totally being ready to be the one to send the next text. And that it's not, I mean, they've already established this like safe pattern where at the end of the season, they text one another. When they're in the same city, they text one another. But otherwise, I don't know how much back and forth is happening. And so we get, even in their different places, right? Ilya's out at the bar, Shane's in bed, you know, reading, being worlds apart physically and in terms of whatever they have going on. I think starting to demonstrate that there is true interest in meeting in the middle or finding a deeper connection. Also, forgive this weird acne line that I have on my face as a 36-year-old. I don't know what the hell is happening there. I was traveling for work all week, and I guess my skin was not a fan of that, which is really cool. Like, I'm not a teenager. I digress. Then we go to another campaign shoot for Shane, and this time it's for an underwear brand, and he again is trying to be portrayed as this like sex symbol and, you know, walking through the water all macho. And again, we kind of go back to like, you're taking this very safe bet on Shane as a person, as a public persona, but wanting him to be like Ilya. And I've been watching pretty much every piece of content I can get my hands on around Connor and Hudson. And Connor has said in a couple different places that, you know, when they ask him the question of, hey, if it wasn't acting, like, what would you love to do for a job? And he keeps saying underwear model, which is also kind of funny here. Obviously not written into the script, but a real life parallel, as you would. And also how Calvin Klein and or whoever else has not literally taken him up on that. I'm sure his inbox is full, actually. But come on, let's go. We then get the inverse shot of Shane looking at his calendar, seeing when they're going to play Boston next. And he smiles, looks down at his phone. Cut to the Boston side of the house. Ilya is standing at the calendar, also looking for the same sort of thing. And Shane says, feel like getting murdered in a dark, scary alley in Montreal in 2 weeks. A nice callback to episode 2, where for the first time we saw Ilya scared. And we get like a genuine smile come across Ilya's face. Maybe this is Russian blushing. We get a quick glimpse of them physically reconnecting at Shane's apartment, and then cut to the second cup win for our boy Shane. And Ilya's on the couch with Svetlana and some friends, and, you know, is playing around like, oh, it should have been me. And I think that even helps to show, I don't know if it's Ilya's growth or the growth of his affection towards Shane, that it's not him sitting there pissed off, being like, F him, this is effing stupid, it should have been me. It's him in a theatrical way saying the thing but joking, and you can tell everyone's smiling and whatever. And we go to the locker room, and I've never understood this, just as a person that doesn't play sports, and especially not at this level, but this like cover everyone in champagne thing, like now we're all just sticky. I would rather drink the champagne, but whatever. We cut to the locker room. You have these like tarps up to protect all their jerseys and equipments and stuff. And Shane is just on his phone reading a text from Ilya that just says lucky, period. And Shane responding back with the luckiest in a winking face. And it's like, again, we are, the shift is happening. This like, at least between them as they communicate, from this like, especially when they're not good, like you, this, da 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 da. Like, even if Ilya had meant what he sent, which I don't think he did, then you get this, the luckiest response, which if you were to abstract this text thread out of this moment, and let's say that Ilya had said to him, like, you're lucky, meaning to like have me, and Shane responding back with the luckiest but a winking face. It's like we're almost in that territory where the true like beginning of a relationship banter is happening. We'll see. I know that this happens, but right as then that celebratory clip is ending, one of his teammates comes up and like kisses him on the cheek out of celebration. Obviously not meant in any other way, but it was definitely a purposeful choice to use that clip. It was a callback for me to something that we see in episode 5, where Shane and Ilya finally get to play on a team together, and there's a kiss on the helmet, again, out of celebration, but also not. So this was kind of, for me, again, in rewatching, a little bit of a like foreshadowing seed for that future clip. And it's summer because we're running again around the house. And we're in summer of 2016. We know that because of the text, but also because of the running. And Shane is the one to initiate the text thread this summer and says, don't work too hard this summer. I'm going to win again next year. He's now won the cup 2 years in a row. Good for him. And Ilya comes back with, the only cup you'll have next year is the one I'll take off with my mouth. All right. And again, the choice to have it be the one I'll take off with my mouth instead of you'll take off with your mouth of mine, right? To me is a stark contrast from the Ilya we saw obviously at the end of episode 2, right? It's that this is his way of demonstrating his, we'll call it lust for now. Obsession isn't the right word. We'll go with lust. His infatuation with Shane. Wanting to do things to Shane, not just have him do things, not just have Shane do things to him, I guess is how I would put that. Unlike some of the texts that he has sent before, Shane reacted very positively to that, smiled, and we get Hayden just being like, hey, come on, focus, we're running. And I think at this point we can run and look at our phones and text, and you guys aren't even talking, but whatever. We again continue to have this color story difference of Ilya in black, Shane in white, and there's clearly an intensity in Ilya's demeanor, and I think he the athlete side of him is really chasing that cup this year, the Stanley Cup or whatever the version is in the show that could be approved. We then get a very brief glimpse into outside of running, which is what they do during the summer, what Ilya's home life is looking like at this point. He is handing water to his dad, holding pills. His dad has a fairly flat affect, I think signifying very clearly that the memory problems, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever, has continued to progress. I mean, it's been a couple years since we were at the Olympics, so it makes sense. He seems to be frustrated on the phone. I don't know if that's, navigating his health care or if this is, involving Alexei not being here to do the shit that he's supposed to be doing. And we get a shot where we actually highlight Shane and his dad's relationship. Obviously, Shane's mom is a very important component to this, but we see them at the cottage having conversations, about hockey stuff. And it serves as this like much needed dichotomy, right? Where it's not just Shane's in bed reading, Ilya's out partying. It's all of the stuff around them and their relationships with the people that are at least genetically the closest to them, right? We've got Ilya in the dark trying to take care of his dad, frustrated, to Shane and his dad joking outside in the sun, but talking about hockey. And so it's like Ilya's dealing with real life shit. Hockey is probably not even on his mind outside of obviously his workout routine and everything else. And that Shane is in such a different and even potentially from Ilya's perspective, privileged position that the chaos in his life is so much less. But yet that does not translate to maybe a deeper connection with his parents. You could almost make the parallel of like surface level versus like depth into the bullshit. I don't know. It was just as Jacob and team do consistently throughout the season, they take these like montage moments to continue to position them so that we don't forget that they are completely different and coming from completely different worlds. And unlike the summer before, where Ilya was easily tempted away from his phone by a girl in the club, someone comes up to him and he just kind of looks at her and is like, with his face, is like, "Can I help you?" as he's staring at his phone. And we get, again, that mirror shot of Shane at a family dinner with Hayden. And, he's also like under the table looking at his phone. We get yet another campaign shoot where Shane is on and he's looking at his phone and the director has to kind of be like, "Hey buddy, can you focus here? Let's get through this." All of this signifying like we've evolved from this might be something that's like taking over our minds to we're there. And I mean, God, it's been 8 years, I think, at this point. And so I would hope so. And we're back to looking at the calendar. This time it's not just Ilya looking at it, but he looks at it and kind of flicks the Montreal date. And Shane is doing the same. And he gets a text from Ilya, "Are you ready to lose?" And we see him kind of smile and then like look around, be like, did anyone see that? Which there was no one else around him. So setting the tone that despite what they both are feeling, how they have improved since Vegas in episode 2, Shane is still worried and nervous, mainly about being uncovered, not necessarily about Ilya proper. Oh. Also, I feel like Kip would be into it, but I feel like a lumberjack. This is like the longest that my beard gets, and I need a haircut so bad. Like the little back of my hair is even curling up now, but I just can't be bothered. As I mentioned, I was traveling all week for work, and it was like 12-hour days of like nonstop meetings, then corporate dinners, and blah, blah, blah. And for a second, I considered trying to pack some of this setup in and filming this episode out there, there's no way I would have gotten to it, so I'm glad I didn't. But I got home and I'm like, all right, it's been too long. We need to film episode 4. We'll get to 5 and 6. Those are going to be like brutal videos. And I had planned this morning to like get up and, trim the beard and cut the hair. And I just couldn't be bothered. So apologies if you hear scratching of my beard on the mic. We jump to October of 2016 and we are in Montreal, and we see Shane out with Hayden and his kids. And Hayden, tells Shane that his wife is pregnant again. We get another wonderful neurodivergent moment of Shane being like, again? And clearly he has a number of kids that are very young. I think it has been like back to back to back. And even Hayden calls it out and it's like, dude, you got to work on your poker face around this stuff. And he gives like a robotic answer like, oh, your 4th kid, that's awesome. It's like, yep, that's our neurodivergent king. And then we get our first sort of like, when are you going to join me on this journey? Which we haven't seen you with anyone. We know you, or Hayden knows that you text this Boston Lily all the time. Are you going to bring a girl around? Are you ready to settle down? Are you looking to build a family? Hayden says, when are you going to join me in this nightmare? Bouncing his child, giving us the, straight guy trope. And Shane says back, God, you want to get me pregnant too? Which is interesting. Again, I haven't read the books or anything, so I don't know if at some point in the journey Shane has had a little crush on Hayden or anything. But especially given the position that Shane prefers, a funny statement that I think he's comfortable saying, obviously as a joke, to Hayden in this moment, because they are so close, because they are such good friends that he can be himself around him. Oh, hold on, battery's dying. We then get Hayden like actually asking like, hey, who's that girl you were seeing? And Jessica, and clearly asking the question. I don't know if at this point Hayden has any sense that Shane may or may not be gay, but I mean, it's been so many years. And now that Shane is coming over to Hayden's house, his wife, 4 kids, or soon to be 4 kids, naturally you begin getting those questions. And even, at this age, I think many of us can relate who have been in the closet that like you start getting these questions. Hey, do you have a girlfriend? Any girls you like? Any blah, 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 blah. You start getting that, in high school, but for sure in college. And then anytime after college, it's like going to the family holidays, like going into an interrogation, essentially. So it's not surprising, especially with them being like best friends, it seems. It would be weird for me in the way that I have my friendships to not talk about dating, talk about whatever with them and vice versa. And so I totally get this line of questioning from Hayden, like, hey, is that girl that you were talking to before, is she still around? Like, what's going on? And Hayden, leaning into the straight boy trope, is like, you ever hit that? He's like, don't say hit that. And Hayden's comeback is, I'm sorry, Virgin Mary. And Shane, mid-sentence, is like, I'm not. Doesn't say a virgin or whatever. And they're interrupted because Hayden needs to pass the kid off to Shane. But I wonder if he has actually ever been with a girl. I don't know. Again, I don't have any of the backstory other than what we're being shown on the show. But that wouldn't surprise me. And that would mean that the only person he's been with is Ilya. And what is going to unfold later, towards the end of this episode, a little like tiny foreshadowing moment. And clearly we're demonstrating how close Hayden and Shane are, as close as Shane can be to Hayden. In this handoff and like, okay, go to Uncle Shane. And Hayden is like, yeah, hey, if you ever want to like bring her around and we can do couple stuff. And it feels almost like Hayden's trying to grow their friendship, and maybe he feels like he's being left out of like that part of Shane's life, and it would be totally organic for them to go do couple stuff with their significant others, right? If that other person wasn't Ilya Rosanov. Not that they're significant others, they're just trying to figure it out. And, you know, Shane's like, I don't see her at all. Like, I think she's engaged or something. And I don't know if this Jessica person ever existed. maybe not. And Hayden's like, okay, so I didn't ask you if you were single, but if that's the girl that we last heard about and you have said this, I'm going to assume that you're single. And hey, my wife has a super hot friend that we could hook you up with. She does mommy yoga, you know, blah, blah, blah. Shane calling Hayden out for swearing. Again, we are in the same vein as this like non-smoking campaign with Ilya. But seeing him holding this kid, looking at Hayden and being like, swear jar. I know nothing about his goals for his long-term future in terms of family, relationship, X, Y, and Z. And I doubt actually at this point in time he does either. But you, in this very brief moment at 8:11, you can see the type of dad he would be, which is really sweet. And we get a parallel shot, I believe, in episode 5 with Ilya. And I could be totally overreading it. I could also be biasing because of the spot that my husband and I are in, which is like trying to find an egg donor and have kids ourselves. But it very much feels like a quick glimpse into what Shane may want for the future. Obviously not with Hayden. I don't know. You just get dad vibes, and it's brief, but was something that on rewatch again really kind of caught the attention. And we get Hayden being like, can I just show you her Instagram? It would make my wife so happy. Shane then kind of comes back and is like, oh, so we both need to make your wife happy now. And he's like, yeah, if you want her to keep making you this gross ass food and stocking the house with ginger ale, the answer is yes. And before we can get the Insta pulled up on the phone, one of the kids is doing something nuts in the corner, so Hayden needs to run off. And we get this like quiet moment, and Shane's kind of like bouncing the baby. And again, this like, I'm going to tell my secret, not really, but say something to someone who will never tell because they're an infant and they don't know what you're saying. But even in that moment, he can kind of say like, tell your dad to leave me alone. Kind of signifying like he hasn't been able to tell anyone. And just in that moment, as he's kind of like looking down at Hayden's kid, he gets interrupted and reminded of his status and real life. There are two fans who were like, are you Shane Hollander? Can we get a picture with you? And in such a like Gen Alpha, Gen Z move, the two young fans are like, hey, can you please hold his baby for him so we can take a picture? And I'm sure it was a directorial choice to be like, it seemed so organic that he would have a kid, right? Would be straight, would have a kid, X, Y, and Z, that they just assumed it was his kid. And maybe it's just like the world we live in now, but like if a professional athlete that I follow for reasons that aren't related necessarily to their athleticism has a kid, like that goes on Insta, that goes on TikTok, like you know that they have kids. And so I think it would be fairly obvious, at least in my timeline, if someone had a kid or not. And it's hilarious because Hayden plays on the same team as Shane does. And we see them in the parking lot and Hayden's like, can you hold his baby? He curses again. Daddy Shane is like, another swear jar, count. And Hayden's troublesome child is doing something off screen. And he yells out, you're the worst one, which is wild. And Shane's like, you can't say that. Like, he is such, I hadn't put it in my brain this way before, but this scene obviously was meant to evoke this, is like Shane is very protective, rule-oriented, and that would likely translate beautifully into fatherhood. We then cut to Ilya sitting on the couch, doing his own rabbit hole diving and watching a video that Shane did that seems kind of like an 80s architectural digest type shoot of here's the house that he built, cottage on the lake, and he's talking about it and doing yoga and whatever. And we get Svetlana coming in. Clearly, they were getting ready to go out, and Ilya was filling his time with this content. And she's like, can we go, or do you want to keep doing whatever this is? Even though he doesn't move his eyes off the screen, he's like, no, sorry, this is so boring. I almost fell into a coma. Again, the boring component being potentially the thing he ends up loving most about Shane. And Svetlana, I'm going to give the credit to an assumption that she's put this together already at this point, and almost to like tease Ilya is like, yeah, he's still hot, at which point Ilya turns off the TV. But again, as we're looking at how we're building up to where they both are mentally, it demonstrates that Ilya is not only just filling his time looking at his phone and thinking about Shane, but also going and consuming content around Shane and trying to almost like get to know him without having to do so in person with him. And, you know, at the surface level, it's an obvious call out to what we'll see in episode 6. But I think it really does resonate beyond just the cottage, that he can't stop thinking about Shane and wants to consume everything he can to know more about him, which is totally normal, and something that, especially in the dumpster fire of a year that's 2026 so far, totally normal, right? The first thing you do when you meet someone, or I'm assuming match with someone on a dating thing or whatever. I mean, even back when I met my husband, that was the first thing I did, was like, where can I find you? LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. He had like no digital footprint, which was pretty concerning, but I still went out with him. He still doesn't. But when you're, again, I'm going to use infatuated instead of obsessed, but like totally locked in on someone, of course you're going to go and watch that, and you're learning more, and you don't have to, again, for him, do that live, right? Because it's clear Ilya, up until, I don't even know if it's in this episode, it might be, up until he kind of gives in a little bit, wants to keep things physical, surface level as best he can, especially when they are in person. We then cut to another parallel shot of Svet and Ilya in a town car heading out. And similar to the Hayden interaction we had with Shane, Svetlana's asking, so, hey, are you seeing anyone? Is there anyone serious? Blah, blah, blah. And despite Ilya not being able to look up from his phone, he's like, no. And Svetlana kind of clocks him and says, not even Jane. And the look Ilya gives her at 10:16, mind you, this is his most trusted person in the world. And she says, what? You've been texting for years. She's like, I just thought it was serious or something. And the worst lying award goes to Ilya in this moment. And that no one would believe him in his response, that no, it's not serious or anything. But again, is immediately back down to his phone. And almost to like taunt him, she's like, okay, well, Sasha says hi. It's like, I see what's going on here. And we, I guess, now are tripling down on ensuring that this line of questioning continues. We now have Shane and Hayden in a hotel room, and Shane's like, well, okay, I'm going to head out, but like, don't worry, I'll be back tonight, whatever. And unlike maybe the gentler approach that Hayden was taking with Shane in the scene prior, gets on him and says, oh, so Lily's just a buddy? Question mark. And immediately is like, what? And Hayden's like, dude, chill out. I know you text some girl named Lily. And Shane just goes, I don't, which is such a wild response. Like, you guys have been sharing hotel rooms for about 35 years at this point. He's supposedly your best friend. It's not you always text some girl. It's he named her. Denying it is a wild choice. I mean, I get it's in the moment, you're not thinking, you're just reacting. And he's like, dude, I actually don't care. But like it is, and I will give him this, and he didn't say this explicitly, but like it is kind of weird to not share a certain level of openness around who you're talking to, you're dating, whatever, as your friends. Shane is Shane, so like we'll put that in a bubble. But he's like, okay, go get laid, weirdo. Like I'm trying to like get you to open up, but you're not. So like stop being such a weirdo and just go have fun. And Hayden's like, hey, go get laid, whatever, or don't. I don't care. Actually, you know what? You tend to play better after anyways, so I hope you do. And on rewatching, it's obviously not just the hookup, right? But if Hayden's now clocked that whenever Shane and Lily get together, Shane is happier, a better player, X, Y, and Z. It was kind of a call back to our boys Skip, and that when Scott was able to get the smoothie, see Kip, X, Y, and Z, he played significantly better. And it's obviously not about the physicality of it all, but more about feeling like for a minute or two they can be their authentic selves, take off the armor, take off the mask, X, Y, and Z. And I don't know, Hayden's jokingly putting it out there like, I see you, bro. And of course, Shane's like, oh, go yourself. And he's like, I intend to, probably more than once. It's like, yep. Welcome to hotel room life. And we get Shane obviously going over to Ilya's, which he, I believe, was already texted the address to, but did not go. And we see Shane trying to like figure out how to like ring the bell and knock the door. And we get this very quick glimpse of Ilya walking in the door. He's already got his shirt off, but he is like kind of that like he wants to look good for Shane, and Shane being Shane. It's like, should I take my shoes off? No. Walks in, admiring the architecture of the house. It's like, who did you build this? Do you know who did? I think part of that is his genuine interest. The other part is just the nervousness and the reliance on topics that are safe. And we just get Ilya being like, yep, Mr. Real Estate. It was an interesting parallel because then we have Ilya standing there looking at Shane. We're now in Ilya's home, obviously, but Ilya has his hands in his pockets, similar to when we had finally gotten up to Shane's bedroom in episode 2, and Shane was just standing there with like his thumbs hooked in his pockets. We get Shane being Shane. Like, should we talk? And Ilya's like, nope, after. And again, we get this like, I'm having such a hard time describing it, but like the way they kiss it doesn't feel like a necessary precursor for mouths and body parts going somewhere else. Like they both equally enjoy kissing as much as they enjoy the other activities that follow. And there is a level of like connective intimacy that comes with that I think to me has been a consistent through line throughout this whole season that has not led this to be hookups, right? I think mentally for them both, to, sustain a level of sanity have tried to put that in the box of a hookup, but it's not. It's not. And when Ilya just kind of like lifts him up onto the counter, 15 out of 10. We then get a little view of what they are doing in the bedroom, and hashtag Cowboy Shane, mad props. And they finish, and we get this view of Ilya just sitting in bed, inviting Shane back to bed. And the look on his face is just soft, right? There is not this like arched brow of like, how lucky am I to have someone who looks like that? It's how the admiration is for Shane, not for the physicality of Shane. And again, I think most people in the comments would classify me as a Shane apologist, which I may or may not take on. But we've seen the last time that we saw a segment like this of them being together was back at his place in Montreal, right? Which clearly is meant to parallel this moment. And after they had finished and Shane and Ilya had gone to shower and whatever, which again, this is the inverse here. Shane is coming back to bed. Shane had really let his guard down and allowed himself to feel the intimacy in a different way, and had, nuzzled into Ilya and was kissing him and playing with his collarbone, and was like, just wanted that my brain keeps saying like post not clarity to not go away. What's another way to say that? The experience of them connecting that way to not fade. And we're now seeing the inverse, where Ilya is clearly love bugging. He is soft and smiley and wants to immediately like hug on Shane, and Shane is a little bit retreated. And I'm sure that is related to the experience they had in Montreal, where Ilya got scared and spooked and wanted to leave. Unlike Shane back in Montreal, which again was at this point literally years ago, so no shade to him at all. When Shane tries to leave, or use basically the exact same line that Ilya used in Montreal, and says, I should probably go. Ilya in this moment, I think I'm just going to call it a relationship. You all can have your opinions. Their interpersonal relationship has evolved to a point where is comfortable enough to ask him to stay. And a little bit of a callback to Scott and Kip. He clarifies, like, stay here tonight. And not to let it get out, beyond his skis. He prefaces it with, well, I'm not done with you, insinuating sexually. But this is the first time that we have seen Ilya crack and lean into very clear, open, and honest, clear wanting of non-sexual physical intimacy with Shane. As the ever rule follower, Shane's like, well, I told Hayden, and Ilya jumps in and is like, oh, what, is he your mother? Good call out. Like, literally, he just told you to go out and get laid and have fun. Lean in, bro. And at 13:35, you get this view of Ilya. And again, I'm assuming all the things that I see are an artifact of the genius that is Jacob Tierney. But the way that they're positioned, right? Shane is sitting more upright. Ilya is slouched down, leaning into him, looking up to him with this like yearning face. And it's like, who cares what you told Hayden? And just leans in to kiss him. And again, echoing back to Montreal, this was a very similar, like, physical staging between the two of them. And obviously it was inverse. Shane was kind of loving on Ilya X, Y, and Z. But it's almost like it was meant to be an an apology isn't right, but like a glimpse of what maybe he, had he been able to do so, would have wanted his response in Montreal to be. And he leans in and kisses him. And him pulling off from a kiss, but still mouths like this far apart, doubling down and asking Shane to stay. I won't speak for anyone else, but I'd be staying. And Ilya kind of pulls back and Shane agrees and kind of nods, just like lovingly staring at him. And Ilya is just lovingly staring back at him. And we get yet again the like close the loop, consent maybe overstretched at this particular point, but like he asks again, okay, question mark, like I really want you to be here. I don't want you to go. And even though you answered my question, I'm going to ask one more time to almost make sure you're not doing it just for me type of a thing is kind of how it feels. I think at this point also, like, he, how do I put this? Wants to protect Shane, even if it's potentially from himself. Like, maybe it's more, he knows when Shane is comfortable and he knows when he's uncomfortable. And he wants to ensure that he is comfortable with the decision to stay. I mean, this is Loverboy. This is the person that I knew was coming that made me so mad at him at the end of episode 2. And I just love. This, after the palate cleanser, I needed this short run of safety and happiness to fall back in love with their love story. And at 14:08, we get, clearly they had dozed back off, and we get a shot of Ilya quietly kind of like nuzzled into the back of Shane's neck, just watching him. And Shane wakes up. And Ilya goes to like close his eyes and act as if he is also waking up at that point in time. And it is almost like he is trying to safely live that moment and the emotions that he's feeling while it's safe, which is while Shane is asleep, right? He can let his face relax and be soft and let his brain think things like, what if we could do this all the time? Or, holy shit, I am falling for this guy. And that even though he feels whatever he's feeling in this moment, he can't be caught doing so, even by Shane, that he needs to like pretend that they're both waking up at the same time or whatever. And like in some ways, I understand it. Like there are definitely pictures I have of my husband from early on that like I woke up before he did, and it was just like him like curled up on the pillow next to me and just like gently sleeping. And there was something that was so, I don't know, I guess, yeah, it is almost like raw. Like it's this person in a position that they're not trying to impress you. They're not trying to whatever. They are just asleep, but happy that they're next to you. That is so endearing. And I'm sure if he had woken up while I was taking that picture just after, I would have faked it and closed my eyes. So maybe I'll let Ilya off on this one. But it was such a cute moment that obviously we're starting to demonstrate a significant shift in their openness towards one another. I think Shane probably was ready or ready-ish for this back in Montreal. Ilya obviously wasn't. No shit on him. It takes time. And if I was zooming back to me as a first-time viewer, I am hoping desperately that this is that makes this more of a constant. And Shane's little like look over the shoulder, non-verbal like coo, and nuzzles back into his arm. Love it. And as a personally a little spoon and a bicep lover, I see you, buddy. Random side note, because I just had to go and move my phone, which is doing a time lapse of this. I filmed a behind the scenes video of like what it takes for me to set all of this up, to film it, blah, 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 blah. If that's live, I'll put a link or something here. But yeah, if you're interested in how the sausage is made, wild statement, that should be or will be live soon. And to almost triple down on this like non-sexual intent, Ilya's like, I'm hungry. And Shane potentially just asking an innocuous question and or assuming Ilya's intent, given that he had just said, you know, I'm not done with you, that can be perceived in a certain way. He asks for what? And Ilya's like, food, you pervert, and goes to get out of bed. And it's like, okay. And a little bit of a callback to kind of the shock and surprise from Scott when Kip was just casually sitting on the couch. It's like, hey, I think it was pasta salad and with this, not that, to whatever order I would assume Scott usually got. And he was just like dumbfounded that this guy had done something for him. We're going to see, again, something a little bit similar here where it's totally normal for people who I will just call like hanging out consistently, even if it's like friends with benefits or whatever, right? Like, hey, I'm hungry. You want something? What do you like? We're going to see, I guess, Shane and Ilya have that moment together. And in the kitchen just kind of like slides Shane a ginger ale across the counter. And there's a brief second that he kind of goes like, I thought about you. Doesn't say it out loud, but he's clearly paid enough attention that he made sure he had ginger ale in anticipation of him coming over. And then still wanting to play it cool, right? Ilya asks, do you like tuna melts? Shane is like, you're going to make me a tuna melt? Yeah, I was going to make one for me. I can make two. It's not a big deal. But then we get Ilya asking Shane questions, which is a big shift, right? Our boy Shane, post-hookup, is always digging into 6,000 questions, including, you know, going back to Russia and family and, you know, all this other stuff. But Ilya is kind of reflecting that back in his own way, you know, asking, oh, okay, so you're off to Florida after this, right? Demonstrating, again, the intent. I've looked at the schedule. I've looked at your schedule and am bringing up something about your life that actually has nothing to do with me or with us. And, you know, Shane starts rattling off the next series of cities that they're going to be off to. And none of them sound phenomenal. It's like, oh, all the hot spots. And we get this shot of him carrying like all of these Tupperware things from the fridge and maybe showing his intent on being prepared for this interaction, not just with ginger ale, but like emotionally prepared and trying to figure out the balance of this all. And as he gets back to the counter with his balanced, prepared containers, again, checking back in with Shane, it's like, is the ginger ale cold enough? And Shane is either completely in disbelief and or fighting the instinct to lean in. He looks wildly uncomfortable. Like eyes darting around the room, mouth kind of like pursed as if to not demonstrate a level of negativity, but rather ensuring that a smile doesn't happen. Because having someone like Ilya ask you to say, think of the thing that's your favorite, make you food. I mean, very similar to where Scott was at. Like, this is just an absolute pipe dream. It's not, and it's so subtle and small and, you know, understated. But I don't think that Shane ever thought, especially based on their previous interactions, that we would be here. And he is off his home turf in this moment. And I think that also adds to some of the uncertainty, complexity, confusion. And that discomfort that we saw out of Shane at the kitchen island is replicated when we're back on the couch. He is arms closed, like he's physically there and mentally spiraling and emotionally lost. And Ilya is talking about one of the guys that they're watching on TV. Again, this is the connective tissue between these two is hockey. And so they're having this like superficial conversation about this guy. And they talk about this other player, Ryan Price. And clearly, based on the very little context we get, he's a bit of a beast, like fighting people all the time. And Ilya asks, do you know this guy? Shane's like, yeah, playing against him. I always am trying not to fight him. But it appears that Ilya had at some point been on the same team as this guy. I don't know if it struck a nerve for Ilya and that he understands that he's most likely understood in the same vein as this Ryan Price person. But he kind of leans back into the couch, mimics Shane's posture with his arms closed, still more relaxed, but makes it a point to say, you know, he's not how you think he would, that, you know, he's quiet, he keeps to himself, which if we want to draw a parallel, right, could be that this Ryan Price is closed off, he's there to play hockey, he's not there to make lifelong friends, to make connections, to blah, 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 and or he's misunderstood. And I will say with a high level of confidence, there is a piece of that Ilya relates to. And Shane, you know, makes a comment about, well, yeah, I mean, if you're traded every season, it's hard to make friends. Totally makes sense. And Ilya, again, I think speaking from his experience and not from any intel he has on this other player, but is like, well, yeah, he probably wants to get traded again, right? Almost this running away, not getting too deep, not making connections, not forming bonds, showing up, disappearing, moving to the next thing and back. Here we are. And that paralleled with them sitting this way at 15:35 is even maybe him subconsciously trying to explain the way he is showing up for Shane in a incredibly subtle context. Shane tries to crack a joke and it's like, and they say you're not funny. And Shane's like, they do, right? Hey, this is Golden Boy. No one ever says anything bad about him. And Ilya doubles down and says, you know, they say you're boring too. Again, something that we believe Ilya really loves about Shane. And Shane's like, who? And he was like, me. I say that. And it's almost like in that moment we've shifted back to the traditional dynamic where they're physically distanced. Ilya is poking fun at Shane. And now we see Shane going back to asking questions, right? And it felt like by Shane not embracing and or meeting Ilya at the level of openness, maybe, difference, probably, that there's this retreat to safety from Ilya that somehow triggered Shane to be more open. It's almost like it's this like inverse situation where neither of them can be engaged up until this point at the same level. And Shane almost feels more comfortable when he's being poked at and prodded, and Ilya is acting like the Ilya that he has known, even though I'm sure deep down the Ilya in bed that asks him to stay and in all of those things is what he really wants. We see them shift back into their standard roles of engagement with one another. So now, you know, we've got Shane asking, what's your favorite city to play in? And Ilya's like, well, New York, because it's New York. I love New York, but they all hate me there. And playing into this, like, you're an asshole, you're the villain, you're hated everywhere. Shane's like, every city hates you. And he's like, nope, not in Florida. A lot of Boston people there. They love me. And Ilya asks the same question back. Where do you like to play? And Shane is Shane. He gives very basic answers. You know, he's like, Ottawa, it's my hometown. Toronto, Winnipeg, I'm glad they have a team again. And we just get this shot of Ilya like smiling. And he just kind of like quietly laughs. And Shane smiling, not taking offense to it, right? It's like, what are those boring answers? And Ilya's like, yes. And this is, I think, one of those moments that highlights that, oh, battery's dying. He says, you know, I also like the hot places weather-wise. And I'm going to consider this a semi-recoiled Ilya. It's like, oh, well, LA's hot and they have hot women. And again, we're back to this like baby and snake analogy. And Shane takes that like, you know, a brick to the chest. Because even though we'll go through the last bits of his exploration, I think deep down he knows that he's gay at this point. You know, as a throwaway comment, Shane's like, well, there are hot women everywhere, right? And for some reason, Ilya takes this moment to admit to Shane, bring up to Shane, that there's a girl in Boston that he likes a lot. And he goes on to talk about Svetlana, and he's, you know, kind of going on, and Shane trying to play it cool and be robotic is like, cool, awesome. And Ilya's like, you know, she likes you very much. And Shane retreats and goes robotic and is like, oh, that's nice. And in this moment, you realize Ilya is physically self-soothing. He's like playing with his ear, and he's been super tactile with Shane. And the way that he brings Shane through his panic back to reality is through touching him, holding his face, that sort of stuff. And I couldn't quite place where that was coming from. I didn't know if that was coming from him trying to hold off his repressed self, if this was him trying to encourage the version of him that wants to be honest with Shane. I don't know that I got a good sense of what was driving that, but there was definitely continuous external self-soothing from Ilya through the rest of this conversation. And, you know, Shane, deadpanning ahead, asks, well, you know, is she your girlfriend? And it's like, no, nothing like that. Old friend. We just, you know, it's casual. It's casual. Sometimes we hook up. And kind of throwing it back at Ilya, Shane's like, well, that sounds perfect for you, right? You in theory love the casual nature of, you know, our infrequent hookups and blah, blah, blah. Like, it seems as if that's what you're looking for. He admits, like, yeah, it's close, but, you know, and Shane, wanting the full sentence, asks, but what? And Ilya's like, yeah, but that's all it is, right? And this interaction is so resonant with the conversation we hear them have about Elena in episode 6. And I don't know if this is Ilya flexing his optionality. I don't know if this is Ilya flexing his bisexuality. I don't know what's going on here, but very clearly he is getting a reaction out of Shane. And over a very short period of time, we've gone from stay to this dialogue. And I don't know if it's Ilya trying to be more honest with Shane, where it's like, listen, here's the reality, right? Here's where I'm at. I have a girl. I have you in theory, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if he's trying to like bait Shane to have a reaction, to say that he wants more or feels more, but it's the synchronicity that we had like in theory, 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago, has seemingly kind of devolved here. And we've got this physical and emotional space that has been redistributed that we didn't have before. And Ilya goes on to say, it's nice to have a regular woman like that around. Which, if we're going negative, you could think then also is like, okay, it's nice to have a regular guy around like you, Shane, that I hook up with when we're in the same cities. And that's, it's convenience or whatever. And Shane kind of challenges Ilya's statement, and it's like, you think she's the only woman that would sleep with you in Boston? And Ilya's like, I think I will find someone else. And again, we're dealing with a language barrier, right? English is his second language. But from a writing perspective, him choosing to say someone instead of another woman puts this genderless ambiguity on the statement that I think was lost on Shane. And I don't even know that it was intentional. But it leaves room, at least for the viewers, to think, okay, so maybe that could be Shane. And Shane's just kind of like staring ahead, and it brings up, I'm lazy. So, which obviously is a callback to his dad in episode 1 calling him lazy. It could also be him saying in some way that he won't or doesn't have the energy to go chase women, which again, you could kind of overread into like, because I don't need it, because I have you. And for some reason that kind of snaps Shane back in, and he, kind of smirks and says, I don't know that side of you. And there's this brief pause where we get a shot looking at Ilya's face, and it's almost like Shane is healing those wounds from his dad of like, yeah, you were told this, but like, I literally don't see that version of you at all. I don't see that characteristic in you at all. And just like that, as we're kind of like about to click back in, the timer goes off for said tuna melts. And we're chomping down on some tuna melts, which personally for me, yuck, not going to happen. But at least we're sitting next to each other on the couch at this point. And Ilya is now in the investigative journalism seat and is asking Shane, like, do you like them? Obviously, Shane assumed that meant the sandwiches. Ilya clarifies and says, no, girls. And we get a yeah, sure. And sure is a very important word in the next episode with said Rose. And then he, tries to double down and is like, yeah, of course. And, Ilya is like, I never hear about you with girls. And not that this is inaccurate, but Shane's like, I keep a lot of things private. And almost is like a, sir, like no one fucking knows about you. So yes, I keep a lot of things private. And it's almost like now we're seeing the intended arc of questioning from Ilya. And he's like, I like girls, which is, I honestly think is triggering for Shane. Not in that I can already feel the people writing comments about biphobia. Shane feels incredibly insecure in whatever that they have going on. And Ilya is so nonchalant about all these girls that whenever he brings it up, it's like, it's triggering, I think, for Shane. I'll leave it there. And in making that statement, he also then admits for a brief moment, and I like you. Great forward progress. And, he's like, not this person. But I think he knows he can play with Shane this way, and that Shane even like immediately is like, well, of course I'm boring, right? But in a flirtatious way, and tries to, again, revert back to, it's not you that I like, it's your mouth that I like. But again, the look on Ilya's face is soft. Which is likely why Shane interpreted the statement the way he did. And that it was lovingly joked. Per usual, we get interrupted by something, which is a phone call from Ilya's dead. And we're back to a very similar situation with Ilya on the phone with his dad, panicked. Like, where are you? Where's Alexei? Where's Paulina? Clearly, there is a lot of confusion. It appears as if his dad doesn't even remember who these people are that he's talking about. And he goes, and his face shifts, and he tries to shove that into the bunker and continue this performance with Shane. And as someone who has had to shift quickly and significantly between two feelings of like, one of the big examples I can think of is like in med school, we had to do emergency surgery on someone and they didn't make it. And you have to somehow mentally get from that to cool, calm. That's not even the right way to put it. You have to go from feeling to supporting the family when you walk out and tell them that stuff, right? And that like physical moment of I need to shake this off, and he just like throws his arms down in a way to like try and recenter. I totally get. And he's not perfect when he gets back to the couch. He's trying to be, but he's clearly distressed by what's going on with his dad. And again, back to the physical self-soothing. Ilya, uncomfortable, is like rubbing his neck, rubbing the back of his hair, just trying to not be weird, not show Shane that something's wrong. At some point there was a Google search, right, of like common terms and how do people in Russia say dad, mom, blah, 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 blah. Ilya dissolves. It's almost as if like him even knowing that he was talking to his dad, and clearly the tone was the tone. You don't have to speak the language to know something wasn't great. He melts and he pulls Shane in and he's playing with his hair and goes to kiss the top of his head and is being the most affectionate and loving that he's been outside of like sex. And I think the collective really hoped this was a positive turning point for the two of them. And instead, we kind of got rocked by this, for me personally, unexplained pivot. You know, Ilya's being sweet, and all of a sudden we see Shane's hand. And even in that, the looks Ilya's giving Shane appear somewhat confused, or that he doesn't quite get, like he's into it, right? But is somewhat confused about this being Shane's reaction, and it, again, me filling in blanks that may or may not exist. In theory, Ilya knows that what Shane wants is intimacy, a relationship, something that is more than just physical. And yet this like warm moment that they were having turned into this with Shane being the initiator. Yeah, he looks at a certain point like a little bit confused, but into it and is going to go along. And in this, Shane takes a more dominant role and asks, are you going to, or I guess less than asks, but asks, are you going to, for me, Rosanov, again, we're using last names, makes Ilya spit in his hand. And as Ilya releases, he calls Shane by his first name. And almost at like 23, 22, leans up to try and kiss Shane. And Shane doesn't lean in back, but says Ilya's first name back. And that PNC for Shane sends him spiraling. But you can tell at this point, wants to kiss him and hug him and keep him close. And he knows Shane well enough that if he's freaking out, he's freaking out. And there's nothing you can really do. And we reach our next valley with these two. And Shane hits us with I can't do this. And outside of like getting up and trying to like wrangle him back to the couch is posture open, hand out, soft, gazing at him and physically saying, I don't want you to leave, which I think probably accelerated Shane's exit at this point. But yeah, I'm sure it's in the books. This part I could not align the spark to the flame or the catalytic moment that drove him there being the interaction that we saw on the couch. We're now back at the same restaurant that we were before, talking about the same bullshit. And the waiter comes up and says, oh, are we expecting another? Because there were 4 place settings. Nope, we're good. Okay, well, that spot could have been for Ilya, but we all freaked out. So, and Momager is back in the seat talking about Wimbledon and apparently is like pussyfooting around. They are concerned that the box is a little too tennisy. And Shane, not in his like well-controlled, regimented, whatever space, is like, does that mean too white? Which again, callback to all of the biracial importance that has been put on him as a player, both from the team and the industry and his mom and X, Y, and Z. When his active struggle, the thing that's like keeping him up at night and unhappy is his sexuality. It's like you would get really tired of hearing about the fact that, well, you're the representative of the biracial Asian blah, blah, blah. And we try to sell this Swedish princess thing. And Shane's like, I don't think I should skip training. Okay. Lean into this regiment here, my dude. And back to the conversation we had earlier. He's of a certain age. Everyone is like, why aren't you dating someone? And his mom's like, well, a Swedish princess would be fun. And he's like, I all my time is scheduled. I don't have time for this. And he calls out, I only get 2 weeks off a year. I don't want to spend it next to someone that I don't know. Call back, or call forward, I guess, to episode 5. Maybe we could do a week, maybe 2, which would be his entire off season, essentially. And yeah, if I only had 2 weeks off a year, I absolutely would not want to sit. Well, I would want to go to Wimbledon. We go to the US Open every year, but doing something that I didn't want to do. And clearly his demeanor has shifted significantly, especially from the last time we saw them at this place together. And Shane's dad is like, are you okay? Like, this is not the usual you. And Shane tries to make it, oh, just because I don't want any wine. And it's like, no, your parents know you and they know you're off and they know you're affected and they don't know by what. And I think this timeline tracks, but they're talking about, his dad's like, well, maybe a trip to London would be fun next summer. And, we can go to Wimbledon. We'll go to Big Ben. We'll blah, 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 blah. Is that the same summer as episode 6? Maybe. I think so. And trying to placate his parents' request without saying he'll go. He's like, well, why don't you guys just go? I'll tell them I'm coming. We'll pretend I'm sick. You'll get the tickets. I won't have to go and do that thing. And his mom says, honey, I don't want you to lie. That's not who you are. Well, and his dad offers up like, hey, is there anything you want to talk about? Like essentially saying, we're here for you. We love you. We would be totally happy to tackle this problem with you together. And you see Shane snap right back. Part of the exit plan is he truly still toying with his sexuality? Has he had a crush on one of the females in the cast? Is that the person that he always thought would be his like go-to beard if he could? I don't know. It just was, all of them is such a, in this moment, such a choice because it's not giving a name, right? Which would show the intention of who he would be interested in meeting from that cast. But we never meet a male or see a male counterpart to Rose. So is it that he is or thinks he's interested in Rose? I don't know. And we get Shane, he goes down to the restaurant, goes up to the bar. There's a very attractive bartender that if I was sitting with my gaydar in a public setting and had the interaction that Shane and him had, I would say there's a chance, right? And you know, Shane asked for a ginger ale. The guy's like, I can, but, and almost as if he needs to build up liquid courage for what is going to come later, and or suppress, and or numb, and or fill in the blank. He quickly is just like, oh no, I'll just take a beer, whatever you have on tap. Which, I mean, how many beers do people have on tap? Just wild. And again, almost in a Scott and Kip way, the bartender's like, Shane Hollander can have whatever he wants here. And Shane does not catch that at all. At all. And Shane is definitely a little caught off guard by the statement. And Shane goes to pay. The guy looks up at him and is like, and Shane's like, well, you keep it then. Very reminiscent of this tip that Skip had. And he just says, no, it's an honor, and kind of shoos him away. And then we get the bartender telling Shane, you know, there's a lot of famous actors here tonight. Rose Landry's here, man. And Shane appears to know who she is and is excited and says, you know, I might be needing a couple more of these, referring to the beer, which indicates to me that he came down here to try and make that happen. And I totally, I am not... I'm not giving him shit for doing what he's doing. We, the collective we, have all done it. I dated multiple girls knowing I wasn't straight. I have never had the pressure, obviously, that he's under. But it feels like this isn't him trying to cover anything up, right? Because he is a pro athlete, is not queer presenting or whatever, hasn't been caught in a scandal or whatever. I guess, and we know the conversation that happens in episode 5 with Ilya. I guess maybe this really was him triple checking, wanting to see if maybe with a girl, it, not to steal a line from episode 5, but would be better. But yeah, the external dialogue and everything that we have here is just, it really seems like he went there for this purpose. And we see him, there's a shot from behind, he's drinking more, seemingly trying to like work up the liquid courage for something, right? And as he's walking through the crowd, he's kind of like grabbing his nose. He is not, he's not someone who drinks, so we are already going to feel differently. But the sense is that he's uncomfortable and says to his friend, I'm going to go to the bathroom, really kind of needs to just like take a sec, and randomly sits in this booth to, you know, collect himself. And there is the one and only Rose Landry. A move that if we saw like Ilya do, no questions asked, was planned. Hey, Shaney boy, doesn't seem like it, at least. But if so, I mean, you fooled me, so good job. And we get to meet Rose, who, again, the female counterparts on this show are 500 out of 10. Like, just next episode, she is one of the most incredible human beings on the earth. But episode 4. She looks up, offers him some fries. He appears to truly be surprised to see her there. He's like, wow, I'm such a big fan. And we get another hockey-obsessed female. She's like, I'm from Michigan. I have 3 brothers. I mean, I'm a fan of yours too. And I think part of the appeal for him and part of the piece that maybe drove this further and longer than maybe he had intended is her comfort in openly flirting, in admitting she likes him, demonstrating she likes him physically, as we see as we go on later in this episode, and that it got more intense, and so I got more intense too, which aligns, right? And I think this is actually true, just kids in general, right, are rightfully so unburdened by the BS of real life as an adult, and you can dream big and you can have fun with your friends and you can be yourself, and the world teaches you them, and you go through stupid shit as a teenager and whatever. But in that, he's saying essentially the last time I had fun, that I was free, that I was unburdened and light, was at 8 years old, which on the surface is sad. And that, I think, is the way that Rose took it. It's also not unrealistic, but sad nonetheless. And we get Rose re-narrating the log line that we've heard multiple times across the season about him being the only Asian representation on the ice, X, Y, and Z. And we get like a very real and honest and like important moment here where he's like, well, I wasn't the only one. And he is like, yeah, well, there was one other, but I had a Western last name, so people kind of forgot to make fun of me. So he kind of hated me for that, which can also very easily parallel to he is cis male, mask presenting in a world and a sport that makes it easier to hide. There have actually been a handful of comments on videos that I posted thus far being like, you're gay, ? Wouldn't have known. Blah, blah. Why are you, trying to dress like a straight bro to do this thing? And I grew up horseback riding, playing tennis, playing soccer, loving art. I hit puberty late. My voice was high. I don't think I ever had the opportunity, at least as like a teenager, to successfully mask that I was gay. But then I got older, I got, a bunch of tats and whatever. But like, I guess at that point I was out. So like I was talking about it. But even to this day, like I, am married and I have diamonds on my finger, and I will say to someone like, yeah, my husband, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And even then people are still kind of surprised, and I don't see it. I see it much more actually with my husband, who is definitely not queer presenting at all unless he's, holding my hand or something. But it was an interesting parallel there of this thing that they keep harping on, that he is, half Asian, and that's, everyone's so excited to welcome that into the MLH and blah, 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 that he acknowledges to Rose in this moment, like, yeah, but I had my benefits, right? Like I had a Western last name, so people forgot to, bully me and whatever. And there are definitely moments where you hear about, queer or top of mind transsexual people being identified and beaten up and whatever. There is 1,000,000% a privilege that I'm assigning to Shane on behalf of me. That like, I look the way I look. I prefer to dress the way I dress, right? I'm not repressing anything. No, I'm not walking out in this, but like, this hat is in my closet. I am almost constantly either dressed as a tech bro from the Valley or a frat bro. Like those are my two things that I like to dress myself in. I'm white, but I just thought there's been this through line the whole show about him being Asian and him feeling somewhat uncomfortable with the talk track. And we finally now kind of get to see potentially a source of that awkwardness or conflict is that he hasn't had to battle or may or may not have had to battle the same way that, again, like in the earlier episodes, a Tiger Woods or a Serena Williams would have. And that really what he's struggling with is the potential that he is gay. And we see Rose and Shane continuing just to blab at one another in this booth. We get a refresh of drinks. And all I could think about was, this is Shane's dream, right? Rose is organically offering up information about her family, her brothers, what they do, how, her one brother made it so far in hockey and then now is an agent. And he has asked Ilya a million times about Russia, about his family, about whatever, and has gotten near radio silence. Don't shoot. I'm not shitting on Ilya for being that way at all. But when I'm looking back on how we got from getting dug out by Ilya and freaking out to this moment, it definitely feels like he has now gravitated more so to her because of her openness. And we'll see her turn into like an incredibly safe space for him next episode. And it's almost like his heart was guiding him to her for what we'll see as the end result and not for what we are pursuing at this point in time. As Shane and Rose are talking about films that she's done in Montreal before, she mentions that one of the ones she filmed was in the summer, and out of habit, Shane's like, well, how does it feel to be here in the winter, right? And she says, I'm from Michigan, remember? Your winters don't scare me. And on rewatch, that sentence stood out very much in a way in which, your storms don't scare me. Your fluctuations don't scare me. Your snow, your cover up, all of this just doesn't scare me. I've seen it. I've done it. I've been through it, which, again, next episode, we know she has. We then get him asking if she's going to be in town for a while, and obviously insinuating that he's interested. We're at a smaller table, playing some card game. There's clear snow outside in the window, again, referring to this winter theme. And Shane is the most unmasked we've seen him. He's organically smiling into the game, kind of holding the cards over his face. And we get Rose putting her hand on Shane's thigh, and he reaches for her hand, and it's some spicy Latin beat. I mean, they're looking back and forth at each other. I'll admit and or give credit to Jacob and team that, like, the character that we have built thus far for Shane, I wasn't worried about him and Rose working out. If it did work out, it would have only been forced from this point in time. And that almost like she was the surrogate, the love surrogate for him, which is important. And also, please don't use other people in that way meaningfully. But he seems really happy. And I, as a fan of him, am happy he's getting to feel those feelings, getting to feel seen. Yeah. And then we get to see our boy, Ilya, finding out that Shane is dating Rose. And he comes over, they call him over, he takes out one of his AirPods. And actually, I hope I'm not misspeaking, I'm like 99.9% sure. The guy on the right is actually trans, which is awesome. But they're talking about it, and it's like, oh, who wouldn't be happy? They choose to show her face, as in theory, Ilya's, swiping through all of the pictures available and not Shane's. And from that POV, I thought that was really interesting because as Ilya, in theory, if he loves or really likes Shane and has had male on male intercourse with him, you would think you would actually be focusing on Shane's face in those pictures. Is he happy? Is he faking this? Is positive end, non-toxic end, is he happy? Yes, great. At toxic end, is he just faking this to piss me off? Let me try and find the little bits and pieces that I know about this man because I have been in his life for almost 10 years at this point to prove to me that he's doing this because he's sad, because he misses me, because blah, 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 blah. That's not what we get. We get all of the close-ups of Rose's face and the joy that Shane is bringing to her life from Ilya's POV. And again, I did not catch this at all watching it the first couple times through, now stopping and pausing and dissecting. I wonder if Ilya is trying to see himself in her in, am I insane for thinking that he could make me that happy? Oh, but look, he's got this girl grinning from ear to ear. Could that be me? Which again, one of the things I love about this show is flipping a heteronormative trope on its face, right? Shane is the bottom, Ilya is the top. In a boring, standard, stupid thing, Ilya would be thinking of Shane as his woman. But in this, in the pre-tuna melt scene before he lost his shit, Ilya is more open, is more loving, is more, and I mean this actually in an incredibly positive way, more feminine, because he's not being an idiot. He's allowing his feelings and emotions to guide him the way that he does. And is this in some way the choice to show and isolate on Rose's face? Something to highlight that, like, that's what Ilya wants to be. He just wants Shane to be his man and someone that he can curl into and rely on and goon out with a giant smile on his face, walking around getting photographed with him. And like, what could this unbridled future that doesn't exist look like? We then get Rose at Shane's game. She's up in the box with Miles, who we'll learn more about later. And again, the choice. It's them all warming up. And I know this is like a normal hockey stretch where you're on all fours and moving your knees and whatever, basically loosening up your hips, right? But again, the choice to have her be on the Jumbotron, step out in his jersey, like while he's on all fours, like he would probably prefer to be with Ilya, was a comedic choice. And we get Hayden looking up, smiling, giving Shane a little tap on the shoulder and tap on the butt and skate away. Again, a kind of callback to earlier in this episode when he was like, when are you going to get a girlfriend so we can go and do double date stuff? Like, this continues to be positive reinforcement, whether or not Shane is fully in it for Rose. All these shipping, tweets and whatever of like, oh my God, I can feel the chemistry through the screen. You guys are the best. The pairing that just cured my depression, blah, blah, blah. Which would only add to the bucket of things to have you continue making it work, even if you had questions. And we get a jealous Ilya on the bike next to his buddy who called him out for blushing in episode 2. And they're listening to some program talk about Shane and Rose. And he just negative Negative. Nope, that's off. And he gets off the bike and, in theory, stubs his toe. Doesn't really look like it. Used to take a lap is how I interpreted that. For women, aka Rose. We've got a different vibe. And we hear that buzz of the Blackberry from 1804 and club after, which again is so not his vibe. And she asks, hey, come please meet us out tonight, us being her and Miles, her gay best friend, and, says, I won't make you dance, ... Which we all know Shane don't dance, right? This version of Shane don't dance. But he seemingly knows her and calls her a liar as a joke. And she replies with an angel emoji. She, on the scale of angel to devil for Shane, is definitely closer to the angel side, at least up until what we've seen thus far, everyone. And Ilya, much more on the devil side. Another white and black, type of statement there. And after he sees that, he goes back to his phone, scrolls down to his text with Lily. And we see that their text exchange, at least the way it's depicted in the show, has been so minimal. We have the only cup you'll have is the one in my mouth, ready to lose in 4 days. See you soon. Which kind of breaks my heart. God, reliving these, it's like, I just need to remember that episode 6 exists. And everyone keeps warning me that shit in what in theory is slated for season 2 is going to hurt me just as bad, which is not cool with me. But, I mean, I've done this. Someone you've broken up with and aren't over and are in this in between and whatever. You go back and reread shit, and it's not helpful. It's not hurtful, I guess. But I took this as Jacob signaling to us watchers, don't get too invested in this Rose love story because Shane's still in. He's still in. And unlike the praises that were, being raised the game prior about, wow, Shane's really on the ice and killing it, must be Rose, him barely eking this victory out in Montreal. The announcer comes over and says, but where was Shane? He was in his head about Ilya. And the media will obviously spin this as Rose not being able to make it. He's still clearly affected by what he and Ilya had, and I don't know if he's there yet. Whatever the precursor to guilt is, I think he's there. He is preoccupied and uncomfortable existing around Ilya in this way, given the fact that they ended the way they did. But the announcers then say, but also, where was Ilya? Which I love. I love that they both were affected. I love that they both couldn't show up as their best selves because their connection is broken at this point in time. We are finding slowly like a level playing field, and it's almost like Shane, and not that he put this together, but that Shane being with Rose was a mirror back to Ilya about the way he has flaunted Svetlana and other random hoes in Shane's face. And he needed to see and experience that himself to learn the lesson of like, oh my God. You guys love each other. Stop trying to test him. Stop trying to inflame him. Stop playing. Because what happens is this. What happens is you lose him. You lose this soft place to land who cares about you, who wants to know more about you and ask you questions. And this shot at 36:49, there are exceptionally more times than I would prefer to admit that I've had to have this like come to Jesus moment with myself in the mirror. This look just is like, ooh, yep, I've up and I need to hold myself accountable. But he talks himself out of the feeling and walks back in to his teammate and says, we need to go out. I need to get laid. I'm leaning in. He doesn't say this in quotes. I'm leaning into sex because I have too much emotion that I don't know what to do about. And of course, we head to the same club because why would that not be the case? The second tattoo started to play, I know it was game over for me personally. As a kid, did what Peter Peters' It's You did in episode 2 to me this episode. Also, Miles is very forward for someone who is best friends with a girl that's dating someone behind him dancing. He is masking so hard, he does not realize that her best friend is dancing behind her. And all he wants to do is fake this interaction with her and put eyes on Ilya. My feelings start to get hurt. And that is when they slowed this song down. And even though I have listened to this song like thousands of times before this show, the lyrics are, I don't even want to press play. All right, there. In this moment, and call me a Shane apologist, I don't care. I think from a viewer's perspective, it's clear Shane is emotional. He's hurt. He is trying to find a path of least resistance through Rose. What Ilya has done and flaunted in Shane's face up to this point is the concept that he's hooking up with women in every city and he has Svetlana and blah, blah, blah. And that Shane is seeing his worst fear personified. That he, despite the level of emotional engagement and whatever, can be replaced. And this is his punishment, I guess. I think my disdain for this moment is you both are feet away from each other, and neither of you, for good reasons. I'm not discrediting that, but for good reasons, can't just pick up the phone and text one another and be like, "I miss you," or "I wish it wasn't this way," or why are you with Rose, or whatever. They have that access to one another, but both out of fear won't use it to move the narrative forward. And I get it. It just makes me sad. Any of you over 30s hear the song, watch this part of the episode and sob? Because I feel like if there's one thing that we have to like unite us, it's this song. Holy shit. Being with you have opened my eyes. Could you ever believe such a perfect surprise? I love episode 5. I just want to fast forward to episode 6. I just need to be happy. Dude, coming out sucks. The process of it's so amazing after, but this is that. Okay. I have been filming for hours. Dan, shut the fuck up and press play. We're back to the chaos. We are back to the chaos. I have seen this show through no less than, 4 times. And still, that club scene made me cry actual tears. Overall, we critically evolved both Shane and Ilya's characters. They had opportunities to really lean in with one another. And as it goes, unfortunately, sometimes when someone's ready too early and someone's ready too late, it is hard. It is really hard to find that symbiosis. From Shane's POV, he is posturing purely from a protective lens. I stand on this, and fight me in the comments. I don't care. If Ilya had been able to open up, and not even in some crazy I love you, love bomb way, but he was able to lean into the moment at the middle of episode 2 when they were in Montreal, I think they both would be in a very different place than they are. From Ilya's point of view, I totally get the confusion around Shane's freak out. Like, he was so in, even though he did this weird posturing of like, I should go, he stayed because you asked him to stay. The tuna melts, all this stuff. I will give Shane some shit for this episode. I don't get why he freaked out. I don't know, other than for his own personal journey of coming out, trying the waters one more time, whatever that this is with Rose. I don't totally get it. I have done it, so I'm not going to say it's insane, because it's not. I also didn't have like a super hot Russian hockey player that liked me and wanted to hook up regularly, but that was that. I'm sad for both of them. And again, we built to a mid-episode climax. At least the hurt actually started sub-second mid-episode, so I didn't have this lingering feeling that hopefully it was going to be okay. Like, they shot me down early, which is good. But overall, our boys continue to be on a very complicated journey. I love the women in this episode. Svetlana's amazing. Rose is amazing. Next episode, Rose is a saint. Yeah, we got very much closer to an Ilya apologist. And oh god, though, Shane up at Ilya's house. Shane did not try to date Rose to spite Ilya. This journey he's currently on is his own exploratory, confirmatory path, and I don't think he's considering how this hurt Ilya at the club, because Ilya is not demonstrating any bit of hurt. But almost by seeing Ilya do that in front of him, he is feeling that pain. I don't know. I thought after episode 3, everything got happy, and I forgot it didn't. And so it just hurts my heart a little bit, but we'll be okay. Overall, a great episode. I cannot speak louder about how unbelievably talented these two actors are, and how well they are carrying these characters outside of this role. Well, this is kind of embarrassing. I am going to wrap it up. It is now 8:40. I started the setup for this video at 12:30. And for those of you who have seen the BTS video, you will know. That was episode 4. I enjoyed it. I'm ready for 5 and 6. I am so ready for 5 and 6. I hope you guys are all ready for 5 and 6. If you have somehow made it to the end of this obnoxiously long video. Last episode, I said something about we should put a signal. Let's just put Loon Call as the moniker here. I'll know who the OGs are that made it all the way to the end. That's insane. And also, like, if you like this and there are other forums where y'all talk about Heated Rivalry and the fandom and whatever, and you wouldn't mind like sharing a link to this in there, it's been really cool to see so many people subbing and joining and getting into what we're doing, that I just want to like have everyone who would be interested available. So there's that. And thank you. You guys are all awesome. As always, totally appreciate you guys. And hopefully we will get to episode 4 here pretty quick.